Now we're going to talk about the ideal nonprofit growth curve. I'd like everybody to remember this is idealized. It doesn't always happen this way. It can happen this way. I've seen it happen this way. Ideally, it does. But we need to figure out where your organization is on this curve to figure out what solutions will work for you. If you look on the left, you'll see level 1, startup. Level 2 is a step up. And level 3 is keep up. Those are the levels that we use to describe organizations at next level nonprofits. On the bottom axis, you'll see 0 to 3 years, 3 to 8, and 8+ years. Sometimes the years vary, but these are generally good rules for what we're going to talk about. So if we look at, imagine you just started an organization, or for any organization like that, it's almost certainly driven by the founder, by the founder's passion and by the founder's personality. Often organizations start with very little funds, so it is likely to all be volunteer. And these are most likely to be found in the first 3 years of the organization's existence. The needs at each one of these levels is different, which is why we're talking about it. But for level 1, they need to increase public awareness because nobody's heard of them because they're new. They need to focus on careful designing, implementation, and evaluation of programs so that they can later demonstrate that what they do works. They need to move towards engaging their board. And so some board training to assume the responsibilities of the founder is a really good idea. And then exploring fundraising opportunities. They may not be eligible for all of them yet, but they need to start learning about them. The level 2 step up organization, generally they still lack funds. This is between 3 to 8 years, but each board member shares in the workload. And ideally, these will have trusted systems for distributing work in place. So when there's several folks and everything is done by committee, how is that effectively done so that the projects don't bog or we don't have certain numbers of people working harder than others? Those are the things that these organizations need to focus on. Those systems, revenue generation becomes a prime focus. They need to generate some cash centers. As I like to say, no money, no mission. And then when the right systems are in place, they need to recruit the right board members for the changing needs of the organization. This is a curve, and you want to move along the curve. And so when you get to the next step, the keep up. So when they get here, these organizations will generally have an executive director and paid staff. They'll have capacity and some reserves. The board, the needs of the board members changes, and the board will be geared more towards advocacy and fundraising. And then these organizations are generally older than 8 years old. The focuses are different, the challenges are different size organizations. So they need to focus on the mission, staying on task and on mission. Strategic planning, so making consistent decisions towards a determined goal becomes tricky when there's lots of folks involved. So, but it's the board's responsibility to do that. They also need to evaluate and incentivize the executive directors and maybe some of the senior leadership's performance. And then focusing on board recruitment and board retention is the main focus there. So I mentioned earlier that these things don't always go to plan, and I want to talk about a couple of the ways that commonly don't. So if we take the normal trajectory, it's a dotted line there, the ideal one. What we'll see often happen is that organizations will start up, but if the board doesn't step up, so you never actually come into level 2, this is the trajectory that the organization will follow. In fact, I've seen organizations that are 25 years old that look like they're still brand new. In every way that matters, essentially, in their function and their impact, they're brand new. And that has to do with training your board, getting them engaged, developing those systems, and then having a resilient organization that can carry on and magnify the work of the founder. Sometimes, and if you look at this trajectory, the board will start to take on the roles and work of the founder, which is good, but they may not be able to provide all of the things that the organization needs to keep moving up. So it's like having a roadblock that has never been cleared. So maybe the organization doesn't have the right marketing skill sets and can't afford a marketer. And so marketing always holds back the organization. These days it could be social media. It could be that no one has experience with finance or real estate, or pick anything that that organization may need. If they lack the access to the knowledge or resources of something critical, they can't grow. And you'll see them bouncing around like this. I often say this is something like, we're here, but we're stuck. And often when they come to consultants or universities, it's because they don't know what's wrong. They don't know how to move past where they are. And they can bounce around there forever. This one is also common, actually, and throws board members a little off guard when it happens. So everything looks right, right? It starts off strong, moves across, all the board members stepped up, and then the board was ready to do kind of the governing stuff, doing the policy work, the advocacy, but maybe there was they lost a major grant, or maybe they want to do something that they haven't done before, and so none of the skills or staff present are familiar with it. So the board members need to come back into the step-up phase. Again, often financial shocks will cause this, or a desire to do something new. But what you'll see is that the board members aren't prepared for that, and they don't understand the level that they were in and what those expectations were, and the level that they need to be at to be a working board again. That's where you'll see this kind of oscillation. This is confusing, can drive conflict and kind of mass exoduses from boards if you're not careful. Okay. So the question is now, where is your organization? Looking at what we talked about and trying to keep it as close to the ideal growth curve as possible, where do you think you are?